Welcome to Plant More, Worry Less, a podcast by the Huachuma Foundation. We are grateful for the supporters who make this show possible. To learn more about our work or support our mission, please visit huachumafoundation.org. Also note, in this podcast we discuss sacred plant medicines for educational purposes only. Nothing herein should be considered medical or legal advice, and we do not encourage using any substances in places where they are illegal. We hope you enjoy this very special episode.
Kristen, welcome. It's so wonderful to have you with us today.
Oh, thank you so much, Dani, Hamid. It's truly such an honor and pleasure to be here. I've been so looking forward to this conversation.
Awesome. I was sort of poking around your website and your podcast, and I feel like we resonate on so many different topics, from plant medicine to somatic work, integration, Huachuma. We got connected in our Huachuma wisdom course. So I'm so excited to get into your journey through all of these like wonderful modalities that you practice. But first, I'm curious about your journey and what got you to this point. Like, how did you find all of the healing arts and plant medicine and breath work? Sort of curious where you were before you got into this whole world.
Oh my gosh. It's such a good question. And it's such a beautiful, long, winding journey. You know, there's a part of me that feels like this has been my path my whole entire life. And yet it really started like when I left the sort of default world, the system, university, my first couple of years in my corporate job. Where do I even start here? I feel like there was just always a part of me that felt like the system that we're living within isn't quite right. There was always this part of me that was just searching for meaning. You know, I remember reading books on consciousness when I probably should have been reading like Harry Potter and other books like that. I remember reading books on brain science and neuroscience and who we are and how we think and why we're here. And these kinds of books fueled me, you know, as I was going to school, deciding on my major. I always remembered finding it really difficult to choose a life path at 18 years old and 19 years old. And in college, you know, you have to choose your major when you're 19. At least for us, it was that way as we went into our sophomore year. They're like, choose your major. And I just remembered feeling like I want to learn everything, you know, I want to go down the road of I want to study art. I wanted to study psychology and sociology. Glad I didn't go for sociology. Everyone knows it's not a super useful degree. And I wanted to study business and I wanted to study everything. And so I remember kind of putting it off until the last minute. And I finally chose psychology, minored in business and art. I'm not going to make you guys go through my whole entire past here, but it was interesting because my studies in psychology really enriched my education, but I was never really going down the therapeutic route. And I remember feeling when I studied at Gonzaga, like there's, you know, a potential career path as a therapist when you study psych. And I remember trying to feel myself in this role and kind of like sitting on a sofa across from a client with my notes, with my glasses on, listening to someone's story, you know, client after client in an office. And it didn't land for me. And I just thought, you know, that's not my path in psychology. So I ended up taking more classes and studying at more in the area of research and neuroscience, as I mentioned, was kind of the area I've been so passionate about my entire life, kind of understanding how we work and why we work, behavioral psychology, social psychology. And, you know, by the end of graduation, I was all set to apply to graduate school. And I realized that the other pathway available to me was kind of this like organizational psychology. And at the same time, this is when positive psychology, the field of positive psychology, this is kind of back in 2008, was really just coming onto the map. And I remember Dr. Martin Seligman had a program opening. So there was this new area opening up, this new field that I had never been aware of called positive psychology, right? I didn't know exactly what a career would look like in that direction, but it was pulling me. the last moment before I was about to send my graduate school applications for organizational psych, because that seemed like the most legitimate career path where I'd be able to actually make money and do something, basically becoming a consultant, right? I remember, and I'm sharing this with you because this was like the real first ping of spirit that I really felt in my life, which had been quite mainstream and default life up to that point. Kind of growing up in the suburbs and things like that. I was going off to mail my letters and I felt this massive pull that was like, put the letters in your drawer, put the letters in your desk. Do not mail those out right now. It's not the time. And it was so strong. And so I listened. I did it. I was like, okay, I could go mail these tomorrow. It doesn't have to be today. And I put them in my drawer, and it just became very clear that I was not meant to go that path. And I told myself, okay, I'm going to work for a few years before I apply to graduate school. So that ping of spirit, I know it's like a little long-winded story on that. That has been what's followed me for most of my life from there on out. I did end up getting a job in the corporate world, and 2 years in, I found myself, I had worked in psych, I worked in research, and I worked at a law firm. And 2 years in, I felt that same ping that was like, this is not it. You're not here to do this. Like, there's something more, and you're here to discover it, whatever that might be. So this might be the beginning of the Soul Rewilding experience, right? Because the long story short is, I found a way. I went through this whole drama with my law firm, and because I had been questioning things. I was writing a blog for myself, questioning, my meaning and purpose, and all of our meaning and purpose, and what we're here doing, and what is this system that really, drives us down this path of quote unquote so-called success. But everyone around me looks like they're dying inside, right? We're having the same conversations. Everyone is dealing with their suppressed emotions with the same coping mechanisms. And so, some things happened with my work, and I ended up leaving and finding a way to teach English abroad. So teaching English was my way to go explore the world. I knew that after that job, I needed to get out of the United States. I had been in the US my whole life. We never really traveled, not by any fault of my family, but it was just sort of my upbringing. Like, we all, just stayed in the States, as many Americans do, right? Just not really end up traveling so much. But it was a part of my soul. Like, I had studied abroad in college and then done these little trips to Italy to teach English in the summer times in between my corporate job when I was like 21, 22. And so this leap to teach English was really me saying, I'm going to give this a real go. I'm going to see what happens and what other parts of me can come online in pursuit of this greater sense of purpose that I have no idea what it is yet, but it's something to do with positive psychology, and it's something to do with breaking free of the traditional systems and kind of default world that I find myself in. So that was how I left the States. And I guess the long story short, what makes my story, I suppose, what it is, there's no way around it, is I ended up traveling and becoming a nomad and an expat for about many years, about 15 years until today, years old. And, it's a beautiful time that we're connecting here on this podcast because, 15 years into this journey, it wasn't all travel and backpacking around the world. I lived in many countries. I lived in Czech Republic teaching English. I moved to Thailand in 2012, also on a call of spirit. So spirit started speaking to me and pulling me in these directions. And all of that ended up leading me more into myself and my own inner healing work, right? Which of course led me to the path of somatics, of yoga, of studying these healing modalities, first and foremost for myself. And then through the years, as I integrated those and kind of felt this natural call and pull to share them with others, it's become my path to facilitate and to guide others on this journey as well, of really finding integration and wholeness in ourselves. I kind of have this interesting relationship with the whole world of healing, right? And I can pause here and we can take a breath on this long share. But my path led me to Thailand and then to Bali, where I found yoga after moving through an incredibly difficult breakup with a very, very karmic relationship that sucked my soul out of me in a big way. And I could say that with love now looking back, because it maybe that's a dramatic way to put it, but it really, I gave myself completely to something that was not giving back to me. And it was because I had not I had not seen myself fully. I had always been looking outward and seeking and going to the next thing and going to the next training and going to the next job and the next country. And that caught up with me. And so finding yoga, I just dived in. It was, it's a whole other story. But that was the beginning really of my more distinct spiritual path, was in 2014. And then I traveled to India to train, to teach, and then things just accelerated from there. But I guess I can pause there. That's a little bit of how I got into the healing work.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kristen. And I just have a quick question about the nudge from spirit. How did you know? Like, I'm sure many people get the nudge. So just before we go on, I'm curious. And then how did you know to keep following it as it kept happening?
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good question, Dani. Yeah. I really believe that we all feel this call differently, right? For some people, they hear it as a voice, they feel it as something in their body. For me, it's almost a resistance that I felt to doing the thing that I was about to do in that moment, that first call, like where I was about to go, send these applications and just blindly walk down the default path that was set out for me, that is the one that I would receive the most kind of validation and accolades from society, from my family, et cetera, right? Go get a good job, become a consultant, study organizational psych, make the money, et cetera. I felt this, like a compression in my sacral area. And I think for me, as a generator in human design, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with human design. I imagine maybe at least somewhat.
Little.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. It's, for me, this sacral response here in my gut is where I feel a pull, like a yes or a no. And that has to do with kind of the sacral definition of the generator. But just from a more spirit-led perspective, it feels like I have this pull here in my belly, kind of just above the belly button, in that sacral area. That's like a yes or a no, kind of preventing me from walking one path. But when things started to move and to flow, and once I had kind of left the United States and begun my journey of living abroad, and teaching English and being more in the flow there, I started connecting to my dream space and receiving a lot of information that way. That's what led me to Thailand. I actually was at a turning point where I was having dreams both about Thailand and about Tanzania in Africa. And I knew that I was going to go to one of those places next. The idea was to teach English and get another job. And I almost went to Africa, and I ended up going to Thailand, just because this call was stronger and some different things lined up. But it's the same thing that brought me to Peru in 2019. And that was one of the strongest dreams of my entire life. It was wild, and I can share more about that if you guys want. But I'd say dream space, felt sense in my body is how spirit speaks to me the most.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I know I'm not saying anything because I'm just enraptured listening. So, carry on.
Carry on.
Okay, well, I have a lot of questions. So,
Yeah, let's go.
All right, get at it.
Okay, all right. So you have this thing about like the wild within and rewilding your soul, and I'm wondering if this was the path that you were on, going from a corporate sort of like the normal path into the spirit-led path, and is that the journey of rewilding your soul, or is there something else there? And what does that mean to you? And I see that you help people do that, and I'm like, that sounds so amazing.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm glad you felt drawn to that part of my work and the rewilding work. It's something that I've come to over the years, and I'd say yes, partially in a way, that journey of leaving the corporate world and moving abroad and all of that. And of course, there were many other chapters of life, like I went into the digital nomad world and got into entrepreneurship, and but I would say like these were all different layers of self-discovery. I was really on this journey of exploring and moving outward and trying different things. And let's see what happens if I stop working at a school and I start working on the internet and then get caught up in this whole journey. When I was living in Thailand for many years, it was like this entrepreneur university. This was kind of the beginning of the digital nomad movement, which now has obviously exploded, and places that used to be quite more peaceful and less, touched and overrun have really exploded with remote workers, right? So I felt like I was not in the beginning of this movement, but back when Chiang Mai was just starting to become a hub for this. So it was exploring different parts of myself, but I would say that the journey of rewilding really began when I started going more inwards. It was almost a reverse of the spiral. It was like this out, 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 out. And as I mentioned, is like for me in my life, I was always seeking, I was unknowingly looking for validation because I was carrying a lot of trauma. I was carrying the wound of feeling, a lack of self-worth, of feeling unsure of myself, of not really having any idea what the hell I was doing in my life. Like I was exploring and playing, but deep down I was like, I don't have the validation from the outside world that I would have if I had walked the straight and narrow path. I ended up attracting different relationships, like I mentioned, that were very challenging and very draining for me. And when I started practicing, when I started studying yoga, when I began going into silence and practicing meditation, when I began connecting back with nature, because this is the true essence of rewilding, is returning to our essence. And the term rewilding was actually coined, I forgot exactly who it is, but it's, to indicate the return of our ecosystems to their natural state, right? And this is a term that's obviously come through in our current time due to the catastrophic events that we as humanity have had and been having and are having upon our environment. So the rewilding movement is about restoring ecosystems. And so for me, soul rewilding is about restoring our own ecosystem inside. When I felt the call to Peru, that I feel really was when my journey of soul rewilding began, or at least took another big step. There was a next level that unfolded there. And the reason that I say that is because that period of my life from 2019, really up until now, but more so until mid last year when I was more primarily like living in Peru for a good part of the year, I had separated myself from the outside world in the way that I had been in it for most of my life. It is, and you've both obviously spent copious amounts of time in Peru, and so that these mountains, this land, like it brings you into yourself, right? There's this holding and this, of course, there's community and there's many people that I interacted with there, but there's also periods of time. And I would say just overall as a whole, that period of my life was a return to nature, to listening, to connecting with the elements, the spirits of the land, to, connecting with my somatic practices and my healers that I work with, and with plant medicine, with Huachuma. This is when Huachuma came into my life. So it's wild because it's like, what preceded what, or what catalyzed what? Was it Huachuma? Was it plant medicine that really began this inner transformation for me in a bigger way? Was it that move to Peru? Was it just a deeper connection with nature? Was it that I was just out of my Saturn return and finally my soul was calming down a little bit to really kind of integrate and make the changes that I had been needing to make for a long time. One example of which is simply, noticing these mirrors of relationships that I had been in for many, many years. But yeah, at its core, to me, soul rewilding work it's deconditioning ourselves from all that we are not, all that we've taken on through our lives, through society, through our family, through stories that we've heard, through our culture. And not to say that any of those things are bad, but the truth is we want to come back to who we truly are, right? And that can look many different ways for different people, right? At our true essence, we are unity consciousness, right? That doesn't mean we all have to find ourselves back in that place meditating on a mountain like a Buddha all day, right? We're here to be human. But to me, it's unpeeling these layers that keep us from our full expression in the world, that keep us afraid, that keep us small, that keep us following a path that is not our own, and that keep us from feeling our emotions and letting out what needs to be released from our bodies that might have been compressed for much of our lives, so that we can live more whole, more full, more free, right? It is about freedom, but it's not about freedom without like structure or community or reciprocity and commitment, if that makes sense. Because that's, another part of my journey that has been an interesting one, is learning what the meaning of true freedom is. Yeah.
Do you mind going into that a little bit, the meaning of true freedom?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I guess true freedom for what it means to me, right? It's going, again,
Yeah,
everything's going to be different for everyone. Yeah. I mean, I think for a part of my life, or a large part of my life, I thought that freedom was really being untethered from everything, being untethered from the system, being untethered from, um, being trapped in anything, not being in any situations that I wouldn't be able to escape from. And this is very much connected to my past, right? When I began my somatic journey and really diving deeper into myself, into my body and my emotions and those things that have been stored there were pains and wounds and fears around feeling trapped, right? Around being stuck in my room as a child while there was, unhealthy dynamics happening in my family or the household, or it wasn't safe for me to come out, or things like that. And that manifested for me as this wild desire to just travel the world, to be free, to flit around. I noticed it was very difficult for me to create deeper relationships. Romantic relationships almost didn't exist for me for most of my more nomadic journey. And I would say the nomadic journey was more so from like 2014 to 2019, before I moved to Peru. Moving around so much. And I think what I have come to realize through this whole journey, is that being completely untethered, like freedom is not being untethered. For some reason, Michael Singer's book, The Untethered Soul, is coming into my mind with, all that beautiful, the beautiful teachings in there, which are about, right, like untethering ourselves from the prisons of the mind and the wounds that we have gone through in our lives. But from a grounded perspective, to me, true freedom is it's being dedicated. It's having areas where our devotion can travel, and really committing ourselves fully to that which we love, to our service in the world, to loved ones in our lives, to projects that are regenerative and giving back to the world, to our communities, to earth, to spirit, whatever it might be. So I've discovered that, for me at least, freedom is having these commitments and having structures, right? We can't have true freedom without a container, right? The Shakti energy, it just dissipates. It will fly all over the place, and actually nothing will be created. And so, yeah, when I speak about freedom, I think I'm also speaking about creativity and creative energy, and what gives creative energy the ability to flow through and actually become manifest in the real world. What gives our thoughts and our beliefs and our desires and our emotions the ability to manifest forward into our lived experience and our reality? It is the structure, right? In that case, it might be the structure of sitting every day and focusing and feeling in our hearts, and meditation and having practices, right? For our creativity, it might be sitting down and actually having a time of the day that we sit down to work, to write, to draw, to paint, to make music. Having routines in our lives, right? Daily routines and rituals, and even schedules. Some people are a little bit more averse to schedules, but having a home base, having grounding and anchoring, right? That's been a huge one for me. As I mentioned, that as the moment we're recording this podcast, like I'm really preparing to anchor for the first time in many years, over the next couple of months, and create a home base where my energy and my work and my creativity can really flow in a more powerful way, because it needs that structure at this moment for me. So that was a
it's
long-winded
also
answer to that question.
It's perfect.
it's so beautiful, and I love the way that you speak about it too. I think Dani and I have had this conversation recently about freedom, like the soul's
Mm,
freedom, and
mm,
it seems to be like a lot of people on the path end up going through what you just described, which is like,
mhm,
where's the balance between the soul's calling for freedom, for openness, and for that ecstatic nature, and not, totally destroying every relationship and attachment in the process, because
Yeah.
there's kind of a self-destructive element too sometimes that arises in that. And
Absolutely.
I love the balance, like how you've come
Totally.
to find that the
Yeah.
containment, like the boundaries
Yeah.
allow for freedom in a way. And
Totally.
that really is something I've learned through plant medicine too, is like having really
Mhm.
nice boundaries of a container, like someone who holds a container allows for
Yes.
that freedom, that it feels
Absolutely.
safe to and free and creative and all of that.
Absolutely. Yes, yes, yes. It's so true. It's so true. I think plant medicine and Huachuma particularly such a teacher for this, right? Because Huachuma for me really does embody this soul freedom, right? It's freedom. It's this rising up above to gain a higher perspective on everything. And it really feels like it opens doorways to all potentials and to all possibilities, right? But then to walk that path to actually like harness the power of that freedom and those potentialities requires integration, right? It actually requires us to walk the path in our lives, to because we're never going to make those changes in the medicine, if that makes sense, right? And this is something I'm very passionate about because, particularly after living in Peru, where plant medicine is such a prominent part of the community there, it yeah, I've seen the need for greater emphasis on integration there so that people can weave these teachings of great freedom and empowerment, into their lives in a real way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's nothing like the Huachuma experience to really show you the possibilities of
Oh, right?
what's out there. Um, and then nothing like the next day or days after to show you,
Oh my gosh.
where you actually are.
So
So,
true. So true.
And what to do
Yeah.
about that? Kristen, I'm curious how you work with that. Like you see and feel all these wonderful heart opening, sort of disarmored possibilities. And then you wake up the
Yeah.
next morning and life is right there and the
Yeah.
armor's back up, but you still have these possibilities and these inklings. And like,
Yeah.
how do you find the best practices to integrate, especially Wachuma experiences?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, first of all, I find that just the concept of integration can be applied across all facets of our lives, right? There's so many times that we're moving through intense experiences or expansive experiences or awakening experiences, and then we just kind of hit the ground running on Monday, right? Like I see this a lot with retreats. I've been working in the retreat space for about, oh gosh, wow, 9 years, or more, 10 years. I was working as a retreat producer for a coach many years ago, which is kind of how I got into the world of personal development and coaching and these types of things. And I started hosting retreats in 2017. And it's beautiful experience where people come and they expand and they're sharing together and they're really outside of normal life. You're leaving the ordinary world, kind of crossing that threshold into magical space, into expansive space and healing space. And then you're going back right into your lives. How do we integrate that? And I will speak to that in a moment. I also just want to share, and this is like quite a tender topic for me a little bit, but my initial call to the medicine was very intense. My initial first year working with Huachuma in particular, Huachuma was not my first um, experience and connection and meeting with a plant spirit that opens our consciousness in this way, right? I had encountered the mushroom spirit in 2018, which was a whole beautiful thing. It was actually totally by accident. I consumed a mushroom without realizing that I had consumed a mushroom, and it became very clear to me later in my life that the medicine was like, yeah, you were always. I had felt very timid around experiences that might expand me in ways that I wasn't familiar with. Because I was a control freak. Like I liked to be in control of everything in my mind, and I was a very mind-centered person. And so I just share this because, as we know, Wachuma is such heart medicine, and it's actually about theoretically like cutting off the head, right? Even just in the name, um, which sounds kind of intense, but that really is the experience of what it gives us. And so, yeah, after I had met the mushroom spirit, that really opened up the journey, I feel, of Peru. And I don't have to get into all the details of that, but spirit started coming in more strongly. I sat in my first held ceremony with mushroom, and that was a very beautiful, very shamanic experience, held by a medicine woman in Washington, and then Peru opened from there. But the reason I say my initial encounters with Huachuma were very intense was, yeah, I believe our souls choose our paths, right? And our minds and our bodies are kind of along for the ride. But my soul took me to a place where, yeah, where I began working with the medicine and working with one particular facilitator in a very intensive way over a long period of time without much integration. And that was my first, 6, 7, 8 months of being in Peru for the second time. The first time I was there just 2 months. Then at the end of 2020, I returned. And yeah, began a very intensive deep dive exploration with Huachuma, with myself, with my consciousness, my healing process, unpacking all these parts of myself and my relationships. And this dynamic with this facilitator was also, a significant part of that process in, potentially not the healthiest way. And I just share that because I learned so much in this journey, particularly once I left Peru that time and went back to the States, and I felt all of this expansion and all of this shift that had happened in my body, but my nervous system was not ready or able to handle that. It was not able to hold the changes and the awakenings and the things that I had seen and felt in the medicine because it needed space to rest, to integrate. I needed space out of the medicine for processing that, for being in my body, for working with my own tools, for working with my breath, for going for walks in nature, right? I believe that integration, there's lots and lots of beautiful tools we can use, but at the end of the day, it's quite simple, right? It's offering a space of gentleness and slowness and stillness for ourselves and to our bodies so that we can really listen to that inner voice, to the inner message, listen to the wisdom of our body. We can listen to ourselves. We can start to feel the healing and the DNA shifts and the cellular level shifts and give them time to do that. But when we're constantly opening ourselves in intensive experiences. And the same thing could be said for people who constantly go on retreats, or I see it a lot also with ayahuasca, right? Plant dietas, dieta after dieta, maybe every month or every 2 months, going into a deep, deep, deep dive. We need months to integrate this, right? Like for me, my last time sitting with Mama Ayahuasca, who's also a beautiful teacher friend of mine, was 2 years ago. And she was very clear to me that it's time to take space. And I feel like I'm still integrating that ceremony, along with all of the Huachuma ceremonies that I have sat in my life. And yeah, so I believe that question was how do we integrate? How do we wake up the next morning with the the real world fully formed around us? And, I would say it's staying connected to, the messages we received in that experience, writing, meditation, movement, being in nature, being in silence, like practices that bring us out of the mind or that allow us to stay in the frequency of that experience that we had. Because in that frequency, without actually having to be in that frequency, that's where I think a lot of the integrative process happens. We can kind of step out of the way. It's not so much, oh, there's this checklist of 18 things that I have to do, but it's a slow exploration. And oftentimes I find for people having support doing that can be really helpful to be able to have conversations and be guided through the body and through somatic work. And that is part of what I do with clients as well, is integrating medicine experiences and retreats. Yeah.
One of the things I get out of this too, and we're all very individual. You mentioned earlier, like the concept of unity, and like ultimately
Mm.
we're the same, but we're also very different. I've found as far
Mm.
as like how we process things. It's really
Yeah.
interesting to me because at the beginning, I kind of my journey in this, I would just like, do the things that I thought everybody else did. And when it didn't work, I thought, okay, well, maybe that's my problem. But
Yeah.
honestly, I realized like there's a lot of individuality. in this process
Mhm.
too. And like having somebody like you that could reflect and guide, I think is super
Yeah,
important. Because sometimes people will just like look up integration practices, and I'm like,
yeah,
yeah, but that's not exactly going to address what you're going
yeah,
through because we're all coming from such a different place. You know, you might need somebody to really
so
sit with
true.
and talk and go deep.
Mhm. Mhm. Absolutely. And it's like it's knowing yourself as well, right? Which is why I think having a good foundation of self-knowledge and inner inquiry work is so important prior to sitting with plant medicine, right? Because if you know yourself and you know kind of your responses or what supports you, then you'll have that idea of what that integration path might look like rather than just trying to pick some cookie cutter program or going to an integration circle after retreat and feeling like, oh, that's my integration. I shared a little about my journey, but it's like the integration process is lifelong and begins after. But yeah, knowing about ourselves, right? And what it is that we need and what best supports our nervous system, what best supports our energy and what best supports us in making changes in our lives, right? A lot of times with medicine, we receive information about shifts and changes that we can make. And some of those things are very practical, right? So for me, it's like writing things down and journaling, having a very expansive journaling process after plant medicine works for me, but it doesn't work for everyone. I have plenty of clients I work with who they don't like journaling. They like doing voice notes for themselves, or they just prefer sitting in silence. They don't actually want their experience, they don't need their experience to become cerebral with words put to it, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I
Yeah.
am not a journaler at
Uh-huh.
all. I tend to like to leave my experiences in the unnameable state.
Mm.
Um, and like when I try to talk about them, I always feel very disappointed in the way that I've spoken about it.
Mm.
Like that really
Yeah.
doesn't capture. And then I'm like, okay, so but then it gets crystallized as like the story of it all. And so
Yeah.
I totally share that. And there are people that really love the journaling and they love writing and they
Yeah.
love like putting it into words and telling the story. And so it's like, again, another thing, constantly having conversations with people about they want to know
Yeah.
how to do this. I'm like, you need to, yeah, like you said, you need to understand yourself and how you
Yeah.
metabolize these experiences best too.
Mhm. Absolutely. And it's like we learn just by going through it, right? Sometimes I think there's this aspect of just having a lot of grace and gentleness with ourselves in the process. And I always tell people when we're, doing preparation work for plant medicine, it's like just building that space for yourself afterwards. That's all you need. You don't need to decide what's going to go into that space. But oftentimes, I find for people just taking that orientation of gentleness, like how would you take care of a little child who needs your attention and your love? Or how would you take care of a little animal? Or how would you take care of something so sweet and precious and tender, and just listen in the moment to what it needs. Right. And that orientation, I feel, can be so transformative for people, particularly who are living in this very masculine world where it's all about doing and productivity and on to the next thing, right? Just taking a day or two to do nothing is often a lot for people and really, really new experience,
Mm.
when it's possible to do
Yeah.
that. And it's not always possible that they can take a day off. But for example, when I facilitate I facilitate mushroom work one-on-ones, and I always ask my clients if they can take that day afterwards, just spaciousness. We don't ever do a ceremony on a day where they will have work the next day. Like I will not do that. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
It's and then what they choose to do with that is up to them, but that is always my recommendation and my guideline, just to give themselves space. Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of the biggest conflicts that I've had in the United States, because people are so 9 to 5 based in their
Mhm.
lives that if they want to do some kind of experience like this or deep dive, then it's
Mhm.
on the weekends, and then they're back to
Yeah,
work, on a Monday. And to me,
yeah,
it's really challenging, that kind of thing. That people
yeah.
don't really understand what they're doing when they do that.
Yeah.
It's not, it's not ideal, which I do, over the years
Yeah.
now, I'm much more interested in like bigger, longer processes where people have
Hmm.
space and time to sit and
Hmm.
just be and not have the pressures of getting back into a workforce kind of
Mm.
lifestyle.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, it's a good point though, because it's also like, well, how do we also work within the current constraints that we have or the
Mhm.
current system, right? And that's true integration, right? Because again, not everyone can take that week, 10 days where they'll be able to have ceremonies and a couple of days hanging out in the mountains and in the beautiful Sacred Valley before coming home. Like you said, oftentimes there's retreats or ceremonies happening in the States, and we have to work with that and get creative and find out, okay, well, yeah, how can this work be integrated back in and, like what that looks like. Like, I think that's also an important exploration, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's evolving, obviously to meet
Yeah.
the demands of the people.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
curious
Sure.
if you're willing to share, because you mentioned, this, I think you said 7-month process with Huachuma, but
Mm.
I'm really curious because I know we've spoken offline that you have
Yeah.
extensive experience with
Mm.
Huachuma, with multiple different types of ceremonies and facilitators.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love
Yeah.
to just like open up your mind and just have all of that.
Yeah. Oh,
Can we do
yeah.
that?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, why not? I'm here for it. This is the Huachuma Foundation podcast. I guess I was just laughing because it's like, yeah, this is a very integrative process for me having this conversation.
Yeah.
I think, and this is, I guess I'm a champion for vulnerability and authenticity in my life and my work. And in preparation for this conversation, like the last day or two, is when I really went back over a lot of my journaling and my notes that I took through those 7 months, because I took a lot of those on my computer. And I really reconnected with who I was back then and the experience that I was having in ceremonies, many. With that particular phase of ceremony work, it was ceremonial, that it was held, open the space in the beginning and close at the end. But it was very much a process of going out into nature and kind of being on our own. So this was sort of my introduction to Huachuma work, was a little bit more individual process, deeply connected with nature. We would go out into the rivers and the mountains around Kelka. There was also a sacred site near there, and we would spend the day out there. And I'd be out on my own for 5-6 hours. Our facilitator would come by to come and have kind of like individual conversations with each of us. And that is how my time there was in 2021, right after the pandemic. And so there weren't many other guests really for the first month or two. So it was really this interesting process of this like one-on-one deep dive. Sometimes there were a few other participants, but it was much smaller than normally. I think that there would be groups of 8, 9, 10, 11 people, which there were later in the season, March, April, May, June, more people started to come. But that was, I find for me that phase of the medicine work, it was a lot of, yeah, it was, it was quite mind based, because there was a lot of talking and there was a lot of, um, yeah, like personal process work. I did a lot of writing. I did a lot of journaling in the medicine, and I just share this because it's like my journey of working with Huachuma has changed so much over 5 years, right? From then through all the other facilitators that I've worked with, and then to finally working with Miguel. And I think it's so beautiful that it's like come to this place, and that we've all met here. And yeah, I sat with, after that first 7-month period, I took some good space, and I actually, um, who did I sit with next? Yeah, I sat with some of the local, more like indigenous. I think his name is Don Hernan in Pisac. I sat with what is her name? A beautiful local woman down past Urubamba. Like many people, we traveled to Arequipa to sit in ceremony there. So I've sat in ceremonies where we're together all day, where we're in circle, where we're in song and sharing and in prayer the whole day, which was very different for me than the ceremonies where we're kind of out all by ourselves all day. And I sat in ceremonies with others where we'd hike the mountains and make prayers and make offerings. And, it's interesting because when I started working with John, my second teacher, he's in Yanawara. He was really the first guide who started teaching me about prayer and working with Huachuma as prayer and conduit to spirit, and working with coca and working with mapacho and working with things like this. So that was eye-opening to have sat in so many ceremonies already and yet to be really open to prayer. And now I had been working in prayer in my own way with Huachuma in those first 7 months, but I really loved actually sitting with a Peruvian shaman, right? A Peruvian curandero to teach me these things. My first facilitator was not actually Peruvian. And so this was a beautiful, expansive process. He was also an ayahuasquero, John. And so he brought a lot of different energy to the medicine. And it was around this time, and I'm kind of like talking about years gone by. Now I feel like since that first year, I became so much more mindful with my integration space and ceremonies. And like looking back, I cannot believe that I used to drink multiple times per week. And not every week, but like for me now, a ceremony is a ceremony. Like it's a big deal. And yes, there's retreats where you'll go, like maybe have a few ceremonies in a week, but that's it. And then you take space for integration. And where was I going with that? Yeah. Learning to be in these different ways and different spaces with medicine, working with different people. I really started to feel the different energies that would come through the medicine through different facilitators, and I'm still figuring out, like, is that because their prayers that they're putting in the medicine that you're drinking? Is it the space that they're holding? Is it some combination of all of that? I believe that it is, but I started to really feel like who I resonated with and who I didn't. And I started to make my own medicine, and I was just very naturally drawn to that because I started to feel like I don't want to take in anyone else's energy at this point, right? I felt comfortable enough in my process to work with the medicine on my own, and that was a beautiful process, connecting in that very clean and clear way on my own. And then there was times in there that I took a lot of space to integrate. I think there was a period of at least a year, maybe a little bit more, where I didn't sit with the medicine. And then I met Miguel. And my first ceremony with Miguel was just so beautiful. We were at Pumamarca. I always mix those two up. It's the beautiful. Have you guys been down there with him? It's like the mountain down past Urubamba, that beautiful Apu.
I haven't been on that one. That's more like a
Okay.
forest by a stream, right?
Yeah,
Like, yeah.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
Pumawanka,
think it's
I think is what it is.
okay, Pumawanka. Yeah, it's beautiful ruins up at the top. There's a river that you walk up, and yeah, that ceremony was so beautiful. It's actually interesting because the first Huachumero I ever intended to sit with in 2019 was Miguel. We met at a gathering through some mutual friends that I had met there. Yeah, and we met at this gathering, and I had only just heard of Huachuma and some people that I had just recently taken a training with. It's so interesting. I actually went to Peru. I went to Peru on a spiritual calling, but I felt like I needed to justify why I was going there. So I actually was in a tantra training for my first 10 days in Peru. So interesting. Um, and then so some friends from that had spoken to me about their work with Huachuma and Miguel, and so we met at this gathering. And I had always had him in the back of my mind. I want to work with him, but it didn't happen for 5 more years. It was 2023. I can't remember. 2023 I sat with him, but it was beautiful. And I really, when I worked with Miguel, when I sat in his ceremony, it felt so clear. It felt so, I felt connected to myself without a lot of like outside influence, if that makes sense. And I think I had just become very sensitive to the sensations of outer influence in the medicine when I'm sitting in ceremonies. And it felt very safe. It felt very clear. And I think that's as well due to the prayers, right? And the purity of the prayers. And I feel like that was where I really learned what it is to pray in the medicine in this deeper way, like next level. I think it's always a spiral unfolding, right? There's a next level, next layer of the spiral. So yeah, that was a new experience. And then obviously sitting around the fire. So yeah, many different types of ceremonies. I've also sat in Chavín and sat in the temple there with Don Martin, who's a wonderful, beautiful keeper of that land and that temple. I think he's actually one of the temple guardians on the grounds, and sitting in there, being in that space with him was absolutely, yeah, incredible. So that's a little snippet.
Yeah. Oh, there's so much there. And I appreciate you going through it all. I know you said this is kind of like you processing a lot too. So I just want to say thank you
Oh.
for going through all that. And
Mm.
yeah, I mean the things that stand out to me from that, like I resonate with the prayer. I was never a
Mm.
religious person,
Mm.
and I had kind of this connotation of prayer, I think, that
Mm.
most people had. And it was like when it was combined in a Huachuma ceremony. Of course, my first
Mm.
experience with prayer and Huachuma was with Miguel
Oh.
Mendiburu. And it was like nothing I had ever experienced, I would say.
Mm.
Um, it felt right. Like it felt like,
Mhm.
okay, this is what a prayer is. Because like in the past, it just felt like, okay, we're just begging and asking. like,
Yeah,
and like he's not begging or asking. He's just
right.
giving thanks. And
Yeah,
like, okay,
that's it.
that's great. It's gratitude.
It's
Yeah.
gratitude. That's it. Yeah, exactly. And so natural, right? And so just this, I think one thing I learned in these ceremonies is just that this gratitude, it's like a river that flows through us, right? It is so natural and good and right to give thanks to our earth, to Pachamama, to the elements, the spirits, right? To these beautiful qualities that we're calling into our lives and already have in our lives. And it's like, that is our nature. Our nature is to give thanks. Our nature is to sing. Our nature is to dance and be in joy in our communities, right? And I think that's one thing that the ceremony space reminds us of, because Huachuma is so joyful and it just activates this innate, overwhelming sense of gratitude, right? But when we learn to pray in that way in our daily lives, I think that creates monumental shift and elevation in our own just state of consciousness, right? And thus our reality.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious
Yeah.
about Shavine, if you want to go there too. We hear
Thank
so
you.
many things about Shavine, but it still is clouded in so much mystery in my mind. Like,
Mm.
what
Mhm.
what is the ceremony? Like,
Yeah. You've sat in Chavín? I know you talked about Miguel, like maybe
we
wanting to
haven't.
bring a group.
No,
No,
You
yeah.
Miguel
haven't?
wants to take
Yeah.
us. I haven't set it up yet.
Set
Yeah.
it up.
Set it up. I want to come too.
Set it up.
I love to go
Yeah.
there with
I'm so
Miguel.
glad you
Do you
asked that,
think?
Hamid. That was going to be my next
Yeah.
question anyway. So Kristen, please tell us about Shavin.
Get into Chavín. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? I feel like I went even back at a time before I really knew too much about what Chavín is. And interestingly, so I felt the call to Chavín because the initial facilitator that I had worked with over those months in early 2021, his lineage was from Chavín as well. He had Chavín, um, statues on his altar, and the Wonka and the different figures and spirits from Chavín there. He worked with Don Martin and and I think his teacher as well worked at Chavín and trained in Chavín and things like this. So there was kind of a natural orientation there. Um, and I decided to go, and I actually went in 2021, kind of at the end of that period, the end of that kind of 7-month period. I went to Chavín before going back to the US. And yeah, the first thing, it's such a pilgrimage to get there, and I love that. Like it feels like you're going on this journey. to Lima, and then a 12-hour bus ride. I think I've heard later that the bus ride is really on these sketchy roads, which I'm really glad I didn't know about because that tends to freak me out. But you go at night. And yeah, and at the time, I don't know if Chavín has changed much now, but the town itself is very simple. It's like you staying in a very simple homestay. And I went with a few friends from my time in the valley who were also pretty dedicated on the path of work with Huachuma. And so we went together, and that felt good. It felt really good to have that support and that connection together. And yeah, so we had one ceremony in the temple only out of three that we did with Don Martin. And yeah, it was just being at the temple in itself. Like you can feel the gravity. You just really feel there's something there. It feels, and it is known to be, right, this Mecca, or like the center. I think that and again, I feel like I'm just going to cobble my words. I'm not the biggest expert on Chavín. And I've heard other people on your podcast speak really beautifully about Chavín. I'm like, oh, I need to know all these things too. But it really was the center of the universe in a way, right? Where these people, the ancient ones, were working with Huachuma and opening their consciousness and activating things in this labyrinth, and with the different parts of the temple to shift consciousness around and outside, and rippling out into the area of the world, right? And you really feel that. Like I could feel that when I was there, right? I almost felt like I don't need to drink medicine here. And yeah, it was, and we did. And I think that first ceremony, the other two ceremonies, we didn't drink very much. I think the first ceremony we drank a normal amount, but it's the kind of place that just, you're going to be in the medicine no matter what. It's so strong. We went in the afternoon, and the person I worked with, he kind of had this ability to bring us into the evening. So most of the tourists and the visitors would leave, and we would have the temple to ourselves. And so I remember we sat there on the grass, or we drank by the river, and then we kind of entered the temple area and just sat in the grass. And for me, just feeling the ground, feeling all that has happened in this place, it was just a different world, and we know this about Peru, is like entering Peru itself, just you are entering such an ancient world surrounded by the ancient ways, and Chavín really feels like that. And yeah, and the temple, it contains this massive labyrinth, which it's full of mystery. I don't even know how far it goes back. And I think that, yeah, that they used to go in and drink the medicine and really kind of like die to themselves in a way, to really lose a part of yourself to obtain something else from spirit, to obtain a different state of consciousness. And it is an experience. We did go into the labyrinth and meditate and pray in there for a while. And it was very, very beautiful. Very, yeah, I mean, it was some years ago, but I just remembered feeling like also very grounded. Like this is where Huachuma is from. There was such a connection. It just felt right to drink the medicine there. And yeah, and then seeing the Huanca, which is the statue in this other part of the temple where you go in there, just was alive. I really felt what, like the essence of what these people were doing. And it was these people were shape shifting, really, humans, jaguars, like moving between the worlds, underworld, middle world, upper world. Yeah, just a beautiful, beautiful experience. We walked through the temples. It got really dark, and then we went all the way back to his place, and then we just spent the evening together. And I remember he shared many more stories with us, and I think I have those all in a journal somewhere. I should have them more handy. But it was a very activating experience. And actually, the second ceremony that we did in the area, he took us to this place called Forest of Rocks. And so when you guys go up to the area, make sure to go to the Forest of Rocks. It's incredible. It's like the Bosque de Piedras. It is a place unlike anything. And I'm not even really sure what the connection is to Chavín, or if it's just another amazing, beautiful place that he wanted to share with us. But it's like, have you guys heard of the Forest of Rocks up there? Has Miguel shared that with you or anything?
No.
No? Yeah, it is like another world. I mean, it's like you drive out, maybe it's up towards Huaraz. but it feels like you're in this alien landscape, and then all of a sudden there's just these massive, 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 like monolithic stones, but everywhere. There's thousands of them, and it's a forest. It's like this massive labyrinth of huge, huge stones. I mean, I was just in Joshua Tree recently, like a week or two ago, and it kind of reminded me of that, but like on a minuscule scale of 10. Like these stones are just so, so, so massive, and it's just this unbelievable experience. And to me, that just shows how, I don't know, like this whole area, this area just feels so activated. It feels like there's something beyond human happening in the land, on the land. Yeah, just incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. Still
I would love
drawing
to
us.
return there. Yeah. It's
even worse now. Now I'm like
even worse.
really, really want to go. I feel like every story I hear, I'm just like, come on, let's go.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
curious if I can ask one more question about Chavín, and that is just the experience of sound, and whether there was music, or is it there's a echo in the temple, or what is it like? Because I've heard so many different things about that aspect, and I'm really into sound and just how that works. So I'm curious.
Oh yeah, for sure. I imagine that they were working with sound in there. When we went in, we were actually, I remember us being in silence primarily, and just like that experience of the silence in the darkness, and this experience of kind of losing yourself a little bit, right? It's really, I almost felt this sense of like, okay, I mostly know where I am. Like, I'm pretty sure I can find my way out, but I felt the consciousness of like losing myself and letting like all of those who have sat in this place in the past just dissolving the barriers, dissolving the walls to soul, right? Dissolving all that's keeping us like imprisoned in all that is not us, right? But yeah, I'm trying to remember what Martine would have shared with us about sound in the temple. I'm sure that it was used, and he's actually, I believe he creates instruments, and we did some work with the drum afterwards, but not in the temple. We actually didn't work with sound in the temple, which I wish we had, because I think it would have been amazing. And that was the one area, like the labyrinth area, and then you kind of go down this other tunnel, and then that's where we saw the Wonka. But that was the one area that I remember being like in the temple. The rest of it, we were kind of outdoors. They're outdoors around different areas of the temple. Like there's these different little enclaves. So there's like a little part where you go inside the temple, and then most of it we were kind of outside and around. But yeah, I am just as curious as you as to how sound was used as a tool in that place, because I mean, it's next level. It's like a full stone
Mhm.
stone enclosure of vibration. Labyrinth and vibration. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, how can we need to
What I've
find out what
heard
was going
from
on there.
Yeah, like what I heard from one person was that the sound ended up there's because the temple is that way,
Mhm.
stone, there were also the use of running water under there somehow, maybe in the past,
Mm. Mhm.
and created this like kind of sound that would almost sound like a jaguar, like coming, right?
Oh,
And encompassing you in that. And of course, like there's a lot of
interesting.
symbolism there about the jaguar.
Mhm.
And so I was just
Mhm.
curious if you heard the jaguar.
Yeah, I wish. I don't remember it. Yeah, I don't think so. But I think I've heard that story too, and now I'm trying to remember if where I heard that from, or if I heard it on one of your previous podcast episodes, but I think I
I
do
may have
remember.
shared it because it
Maybe
was
you've shared
from
it.
Miguel. Yeah.
Yeah, or
And
maybe on our
Miguel said that
Huachuma
he went in
meeting.
there and he heard it coming,
Dang.
like
Oh
the
my god.
loud sound, and he was very terrified. Of course, he's
Oh
on the
my god.
medicine. And he started to
Whoa.
pray and say things like, "But I have a family, please
Oh my
don't
god.
take me tonight." you know?
Wow. That was when he was in the temple, he heard that
Yeah,
sound.
he did his own
Wow.
ceremony in there.
Yeah.
So
Oh my gosh, that's wild. Like, I wonder if I would have known about that before, if I might have heard it, but I I remember the silence. I remember the silence and
okay.
the feeling of aloneness, even though I wasn't alone because we were all in there in different parts and different enclaves. But I remembered being profoundly impacted by the silence and the darkness. Um, Powerful, powerful. Like
And
letting those kind of seep into my consciousness. Really a yeah, disillusion of self and an opportunity for rebirth. Yeah. But that's wild that the jaguar is also there. I believe it. I believe it. I believe
yeah,
it.
we have had other guests who had experience with Chavín. Um,
Yeah.
and I'm just curious because this is something that I've been researching. Of course, we're talking about this in our Huachuma Wisdom next
Mm,
week. But I think that like the tradition of Chavín isn't really around anymore in the way that it used to
mm,
be. Like I don't
mhm,
know. Did you get a sense from Don Martin that the
mm,
way that he's doing the ceremonies there was the way that they did it, or was it really just
mm-mm.
yeah, it's not the
Yeah.
same.
No, not at all. Yeah, which is really interesting, and I didn't know this before going to sit with Don Martin, but he didn't really identify himself as like a shaman or ceremonial facilitator. He identified him, he works with Huachuma and he's a craftsman. He creates beautiful tools and cups and he's a stone carving man. But he was really just like, I'm going to hold space for you all to have an experience of the temple. So there wasn't a lot of ceremonial facilitation in any kind of traditional way at all. Yeah. And I
Okay.
don't mean that as a criticism. It's just what it was. It was just like,
Hmm.
here's the medicine, here's the temple. Welcome. Introduce yourselves. And
Yeah.
yeah, so I'm not really too familiar with what that traditional ceremony would be like. I know there are a couple of other facilitators who've been working for a long time at Chavín. Um, and I think also in their own way, there's a woman that is up there um, named Cecilia, and I've heard very beautiful things about her. Her ceremonies and her work is very strong. And but yeah, I don't yeah, it's a great question, if that is related to how because those that lineage was completely lost for, like, thousands
Hmm.
of years? Yeah, it was
Yeah, the
nothing.
Shavin
It was barren,
culture
right? Yeah,
disappeared. Yeah, about 200 AD is when
yeah,
that culture went away, and it may have kind of morphed into some of the other cultures that existed. But
yeah, yeah,
there are people who claim to have rebirthed the
mhm,
official Shavin
mm,
lineage. And
mhm.
I don't know, I just have a naturally skeptical mindset when it's a white person from the United States who claims that they have the original Chavin lineage, that it was somehow
Yeah,
channeled through to them. And I'm just more curious, like, not that it
yeah,
matters, because I believe Wachuma is very adaptable and it doesn't
yeah,
have to be a particular way, but I was curious how it
mhm,
was for you. So thank you for
yeah.
sharing that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was very open, it was very almost kind of hands off, yeah, which was surprising, and I remember the group that I went with, these, friends, we had kind of expected it to be a little bit more, um, yeah, connected to some root of the ancient way that the ceremony would be facilitated or even just a little bit more structured ceremony, but it was, as it was an opportunity for us to yeah, to be with the temple and to feel what we felt there, and it definitely felt the jaguar spirit, definitely just felt this, like, shape-shifting energy, this, yeah, because the temple was it was really it was like a portal for consciousness transformation, right, is kind of what the intention of it was, but, yeah, that's interesting that there are I didn't know that there was people there who are kind of saying that they're bringing through those original, kind of
There is
Chavín
a,
lineage
yeah.
or teachings. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Actually, they're in Peru. The person I'm
Uh-huh,
speaking of, his name is
uh-huh.
Don Howard Lawler. And
Okay.
he's
Yeah, yeah,
has
yeah.
a center, a very
Yeah.
famous center.
Mhm.
And he's passed, but people continue to practice in the way that he taught. And one of our guests,
Yeah.
Kat, she's amazing, and she studied with
Mhm.
him, and she said that he, has
Oh, yeah.
like somehow channeled through the original Chavín. And I was
Okay.
just curious, like in my mind, I'm like, that's beautiful. Like whatever we channel and wherever it's coming from, it's all beautiful.
Hmm.
I also have this like analytical part that I can't turn off, which is like, okay, but
Yeah.
like, are other people saying that that's the, like, what if
Right.
I channeled it, So that's
Right.
sort of
Yeah.
my own questions, but not to say that those
For
ceremonies aren't
sure.
powerful in their own way or that whatever they are. Maybe they are truly channeled. I don't know. I was more just trying to find out.
Yeah. I'm so curious as well. I know I always wish I had like come to Peru in time to meet Don Howard. He was actually the teacher of the original teacher that I worked with. So that was
Okay.
kind of the connection, also the lineage with Chavín. Yeah, it was Don Howard, and yeah, I wish I had gotten to meet him. He sounded, yeah, like a very interesting person and so connected to the medicine and very connected to Chavín. And yeah, I also feel curious about that, like what his journey was, and did he,
Mhm.
spend extended times at the temple kind of learning and working there? Because what I feel about that place is there's a lot that can come through. I don't know if it's necessarily you're going to learn to facilitate ceremonies in the way that it was done, because I think I mean, from what I understand, it was a completely different time, right? And it was like, weren't they kind of doing it in community? Well, I guess ceremony is community. I don't know. It seems that it was probably a different form than what we would have as ceremony today. But
Yeah.
I I do think that spending time there in Chavín de Huantar and near the temple would bring things into your consciousness. It's just that powerful of a place. And whether that's just like connecting you more to your own intuition, connecting you to the spirit of the medicine, how the medicine wants to move through you. Because I mean, that is one thing I feel with Huachuma, and I'm curious you feel this too, is like we all develop our own personal relationship as well, right? And it's like, how does that want to express itself to us? How, is it necessarily about being tied to a lineage, or is it about, yeah, connecting to, I don't know, like connecting us back to the land, connecting us to a higher state of consciousness in whatever way, in the way that makes sense in the time and context that we're in now, right? But yeah, it's definitely a mystery school, mystery temple to spend some time with. And I'm looking forward to go back. Like, I would go back and spend weeks there, and I'd be interested to do that and not even drink medicine, just to feel what would come through in the dream space and things like that, and then to have ceremony after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll have to
Yeah.
schedule a trip. Yeah,
Oh
at
my
some
gosh.
point.
Yes. I would love to
Because
help
I
do
know
that and
Kat wants
come.
to go
And
too. That would be the dream team. We get
yeah,
Kat, you, me, Danny, Miguel.
she's awesome. I listened to her podcast with you guys, and she's the plant medicine people. I've been following her for some time as well. And yeah, she's got such an interesting story. She's so knowledgeable, and um yeah, amazing that she's also connected in with all this.
So cool.
Yeah. Yeah, Shavine.
Well, do you want to tell us what
Uh,
you're up to these days? Like, what are you really doing
yeah,
in the
yeah.
world?
Thank you for
Tell
asking me that
everybody.
question. I have been trying to figure that out myself. No. Yeah. So, yeah, it's been a beautiful past few months of really like coalescing some projects of mine. One of which is, so this year I actually have a couple of trainings that I am going to be leading, and that feels like a beautiful, yeah, kind of next evolution of my work with yoga and with the breath. I'll be co-leading a yoga teacher training actually in the Sacred Valley in October. And that one's very exciting because we're also planning to offer a Huachuma ceremony with Miguel after the training for those who feel to experience that and to integrate all that they've learned in our training. So that's one of my exciting projects for this year. My other one is I have just launched with my partner on this, a breathwork facilitator training in ceremonial breathwork. And Yeah, so this, I mean, I didn't really get too much into it in our conversation today, but breath work and somatic work are really two pillars of the work that I'm doing right now in the world. I have different integrative therapies and modalities that I work with. I'm also a hypnotherapist, so I do hypnotherapy with people and I kind of, work with people integrating different modalities in somatics and in breath and with the subconscious mind. But yeah, facilitating the medicine of breath has been a deep, deep passion of mine for the last many years. In fact, yeah, it's interesting because I feel like my journeys with plant medicine and breath work were really intertwined with the times that they began. And I started using breath work as an integrative practice for myself when I began working in plant medicine ceremonies much more. And yeah, and so I've been facilitating that for quite a few years now. We've just launched this ceremonial breathwork training, really weaving those elements of ceremony with conscious connected breathwork. And I I am just so passionate about, yeah, supporting people to work with their own medicine, to work with that's always within us, right? It's absolutely amazing and wild what we can, expand in ourselves, what we can release, what we can discover, what we can feel through the breath. It's so interesting because I feel like my breathwork journeys, like there's no comparison, better, worse, like more profound, less profound, but they're different. My breathwork journeys reveal different things to me than even my plant medicine journeys have revealed. And and that's been very interesting to me, whether it's like the nervous system, like you're working in a little bit more of a contained space. You're not necessarily blasting off. You're opening yourself in a way that is a little bit more self-regulated. And so there's maybe different things that can come through. There's different layers of emotions that can kind of release and move through in real time. And so, yeah, my partner on this project, Greg, he's been a ceremonial breath worker for quite a few years as well. And yeah, we came together at the end of last year, just really feeling inspired to bring our ways of facilitating in ceremony together and to kind of bring the masculine and the feminine. We also are going to teach two different types of connected breathing, the inhale through the nose and the inhale through the mouth. So kind of mouth and nose connected breath, which is something that makes this training a little bit different from others. Yeah, so that's something that's kind of the big thing that I've got going on at the moment. And um, yeah, and a couple of other retreats this year that are also on the calendar. So a human design retreat in Portugal, and then another summer retreat, little retreat that hasn't quite been announced yet. Yeah, and I'll be heading back to Oregon next month and really excited to be creating and offering events and retreats back in community over there. So yeah, it's a little bit what I got going on.
That's so good. And sorry to keep going, but the sparked so much because breath work to me is like, it's really powerful. I mean, I don't
Oh,
think,
yeah.
people should be playing around with it. I did train with
Yeah.
the Wim Hof method and the other
Okay.
things, but anyway,
Okay.
not to like endorse that or anything like that. But one of the things that I really discovered when I met Miguel was when we were
Yeah.
walking up these huge mountains
Mm.
on
Mhm.
Huachuma, you're
Mhm.
basically forced into a hyperventilation breathwork
Yeah.
state. And so
Right.
I put it together because like a year later when I went to him, he was one of the people that was apprenticing was also a Wim Hof teacher. And he would
Oh,
actually, he told me that the reason he got into it with Miguel was because he realized the whole thing was breath work. And I thought, oh,
wow.
it's so interesting because some of the reason I think that his ceremonies really
Yeah.
get you so
Yeah.
high is the breathing that happens when you're hiking up in the Andes.
Oh,
I'm curious, did you ever put any
so
pieces together
true.
on that?
I think yeah, definitely. It's like, God, especially when you're up at Quinsacocha, which is, how many meters is that? It's above Cusco for sure. So we're talking like
Yeah,
13,000, 12,000 feet at least, right?
I think it's
Um,
14,000
14.
feet at the
14.
very top.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Yeah. If you're right, like when you're winding through the higher parts.
the
Yeah,
top lake.
definitely. The top lake. Oh yeah. I don't know if I've been all the way to I probably have at some point. Um, gosh. Yeah, those mountains being in Peru, it connects you to the element of air and to your breath like nothing else, right? Because And I remembered, especially when you're with the medicine, it's like every breath gets your awareness and your attention. You're like, inhale, exhale, just every inhale. It's all you focus on, and it becomes like a meditation and a little bit of a self-hypnosis, right, into the breath. And um, yeah, definitely. I think that they're definitely connected. It's a different process than when we're like fully lying down, surrendered into that connected breath and letting those channels open in our bodies, right? So for me, I would not personally facilitate a CCB session, a connected breathing session with psychedelics with Huachuma.
Mhm.
I just think it would be too much. I don't think they're both needed
Yeah.
together, right? Um, but you're right. It is bringing in like just enough of that conscious breath medicine to really elevate your state and your energy. And yeah, I think it's definitely a big part of it for sure. Like I've never worked with Huachuma outside of Peru, so I don't really know what it is to not be climbing the
Yeah.
mountains on the medicine. But it's all
Different.
kind of
It is
it's woven
different.
together
Yeah.
for me. Yeah.
Yeah. The breathing there and the air and the mountains. I mean, of
Yeah.
course, the vibration of the mountain, but yeah, it's a very different experience. Same medicine
Yeah.
just feels completely different in other places. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, the
Definitely.
breathwork part is really fascinating too, just because like not even just in ceremony, but
Mm.
like last year on our retreat, after the day after a
Mhm.
ceremony, one of the people that's with us, he facilitates breathwork. And so he offered it to the group. And I remember telling him, I was like, be very be very conscious. These people are very sensitive right now. We're at high
Mm.
elevation. They just arrived. They
Yeah.
just did a Huachuma ceremony yesterday. Be gentle. And so then I go take a
Yeah.
shower and they're doing the breath work and I hear screaming. I'm like, oh, it's gentle. It's just, and then I remember asking him, he's like, that was as gentle as I could make it. I'm like, see, this is a really powerful modality.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. It is powerful modality, powerful place. It's like the tensions are so, the frequency is so high that you just need to chuk, like bing it a little
Yeah.
bit and it wow, explodes and
But I feel
expands. But
like you would be
yeah.
good at it because you've lived in that environment and like you have so much
Yeah.
experience with people who are in these sensitive states that
Oh
you'd be really,
yeah.
I'd trust you to
Oh,
to
thank
guide.
you. It's a lot, and I'm curious if you guys have had this experience of people who come for retreats and really struggle with the altitude, because the last retreat I held in Peru, yeah, it really made me think, do we need to require people to come quite a few days earlier to adjust? Because this was all
Mhm.
very much a factor. We had a breathwork journey. I think we did breathwork before any of our ceremonies, and breathwork, but just everything else we did, it was like people were so I mean, at the time, they were actually quite fatigued and not they were feeling pretty bad because they had altitude
Yeah.
sickness. And then the walking with the Huachuma, we actually did our ceremony with Miguel, but we didn't walk very far. We just walked kind of around that first bend, and it was actually too much for people, because it
Mhm.
was so strong and they hadn't I mean, I think by that point, it had been 6 days by the time we had our ceremony, but it still I don't know. It really made me think like how can we prepare people for this? Because it is such a big jump, and also just the frequency of the land is so strong and so different from um yeah, how dense it can be in the States to just this pure high frequency that it all can just be a lot, yeah, for people. So not saying it's
We've
impossible.
definitely had that. We've
Did
definitely
you?
had that experience. And it's one of the biggest, I wouldn't say concerns, but one of the biggest things
Mm.
that I try to prep people for,
Uh-huh.
because people are coming from sea level and then they
Yeah.
arrive at 10,000 feet. It's a pretty rapid adjustment. So we do
Yeah.
build in time before, of course. Like we have
Yeah.
several days where people can acclimate. There's oxygen at the house, like with a
Nice.
mat.
Oh, I love that. That's smart. That's good.
Yeah, to like if people get really sick, then they can just put the oxygen on.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and then I do give actually nutritional recommendations for people
Mm.
on how to increase their hemoglobin. So like some of the people
Mm.
take me up on that before, and one of the tools that I has found been really helpful is chlorophyll
Yeah.
drops for people, which rapidly increases their hemoglobin so they can carry more oxygen. And so there's a
Nice.
lot of like little tools we've used. But I've had friends who like I have a good friend and she said, I want to do a yoga retreat. She leads retreats
Nice.
and she did a yoga retreat in the Sacred Valley, having never visited. I said, how are
Oh,
you going to
wow.
do this? Like people are going to pass out the second they start doing yoga. It's like, well, they just
Right.
adjusted in the end. Like it became
Right.
more yin. So
Oh my gosh. Yeah, this is because we have this training in October, and I've got some time to feel into it, but I'm really gonna be putting together better preparation for people, and that's a great idea, the chlorophyll and
there's
yeah,
a
just
practice
all these
called there's a practice called Buteyko breathing,
Mhm,
Butekyo, Buteyko breathing,
mhm,
that simulates a high elevation. It's a type of breath work.
mm,
Since you do breath work, you might know about it.
mhm. I
Um,
think I've heard of it.
and if people want to prep their bodies for high elevation, they can start implementing some Buteyko breathwork practices before. It's all about holding the breath, honestly, and building
Yeah.
up CO2 tolerance, like divers do
Mhm.
when they dive for pearls.
Nice.
And that process of like building up the CO2 tolerance will basically prepare the body for high elevation, but it takes
Yep.
months. And so, it's not like the kind of thing you can just do the week before.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I have heard of that actually, yeah, I need to look more into that. That's a great potential, at least to give people the option if they're wanting to prepare in that way to work with that, and
Hmm.
yeah, yeah, I don't know. I feel lucky because I never personally had a lot of issues except the first time I went to Peru, had pretty bad altitude sickness, but I think I think for people even just having like, the oxygen thing, just psychologically having that safety, I think can be really nice, them knowing that, "Okay, that'll be there in case I feel sick or in case I don't." Yeah. But it's part of it, the elevation being that high up, and Huachuma, it's the cactus of 4 winds, right? So it's so connected to air element, it's just like, "Yeah, Danny's feeling that." He's the
Yeah.
wind medicine, right? And so it's like, yeah, I think part of the gift of that is yeah, pushing us beyond our normal limits. It's like this is a beyond normal physical experience, and adding in, like, let's be with this medicine in the land where he's from, in his mountains, to really, yeah, become a cactus ourselves. Learn to
Like,
breathe like a cactus. Yeah,
I'm usually the
yeah.
one that has the hardest time as the retreat leader. Danny's laughing, but when everyone's walking up the hill, I'm the one that's like half a mile
Oh,
behind.
oh my
And
gosh.
all I'm saying is one more step, one more
One more
breath,
step.
like just in that I can do this.
Totally. Well, and it's
So
so
if I can
humbling
do
too
it,
because
anyone can do it.
yeah, I feel like it always keeps you humble because you might feel great one day and then the next day it might hit you completely differently, right? Like I've had
Mhm.
that with Huachuma hikes where I've walked the same place, some months later, weeks later, and wow, it's meeting you where you're at with, your whatever process that you're in. Our breath also reveals that to us, right? How we're breathing reflects how open we are. It reflects where we're holding blockages in ourselves. And also what Shuma does that too, right? Like it'll take us directly to what we haven't been looking at, but doing so with so much light and so much grace and so much compassion. So that's why I think that the breath and Wachuma are actually very similar medicines in a way. I think that's why I love breathwork so, so,
Yeah.
so much. It's like it's not necessarily easy and there can be resistance, especially in the beginning. But once you're in the flow and trusting the process and trusting yourself, it will just reveal truth and it will reveal more of who you are and it will reveal all of the support that's here for you. And yeah, what expansion is possible. So yeah, they're very similar.
So good.
Yeah, and breathwork can be a wonderful integration tool as well, but again, like you said, gentle. It doesn't mean we go the next day after ceremony and do a really intense hour-long CCB, right? Like, it can be pranayama practices, just conscious breathing, 10 minutes of conscious breathing, and that's obviously a powerful tool that can be used in ceremony, just staying connected with your breath, just sitting and breathing. It's really, is the last thing I'll say on breath, is just, it's such a profound experience to bring all of your awareness to that sensation of drawing in the breath and letting it go, right? And that remembrance of the rebirth and the renewal that is happening with every breath, right? As we're literally drawing air in, giving ourselves life, right? Like we can't live without the breath for more than a couple of minutes. It is our lifeline. It's our tie to everything. And then with each out breath, we actually we can blow out what we don't no longer need. We also can blow out our prayers, right? We use the breath so much when we're connecting with the land as well, when we're connecting with the coca, and we're connecting with the mountains and with mapacho, and like the breath, it's our cord to spirit in a way. Yeah.
I love
That's the
that.
way I like to see it. Yeah. Oh, wow.
Dani?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kristen. I have loved, I have so many more things I could ask you. I don't know how much more time we have. I don't know. We're probably nearing the end, but I was just, maybe because just one last thing that's like really on my heart is, I was looking at your podcast and I saw one of your titles and it said the 5 pathways to clarity. And clarity's been like the big, huge, like resounding prayer of my life. So I was just wondering if we could maybe round out that with giving some nuggets and how to work with our own clarity.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I love that. Oof, and I feel you. Clarity. Yeah, it's a time right now also in the world where I just think there's so much being unearthed, and it's like there's so much confusion, and often what we feel individually, like the path that we're moving through, I think is often mirrored outside as well, right? So that's part of why I posted that episode, because I also was moving through this moment of like, okay, how do I gain clarity when there's all these different factors, the mind, the heart, the rationality, the fears, the desires, like all these different things, other people, commitments, whatever. Yeah, and so when I created that episode, yeah, the 5 pathways to clarity, I think I can remember them all. I mean, the first was somatic, right? Like really grounding and creating safety in our body and our nervous system, because I think, yeah, so often when we're feeling muddled, when we're feeling stuck, like there's different flavors to um our search for clarity, right? Sometimes we can feel overwhelmed. I know for myself, I often feel overwhelmed by options or through kind of darting between this and that and over rationality. And then it puts me into a state of freeze or paralysis, right? So that can kind of be one flavor. Another one can be we just feel shut down. Our nervous system might be in a shutdown mode. We don't feel the activation or the desire for anything. So how do we know what's the right path? And obviously we can be in a reactive mode, like we might be in fight or flight mode. So it's kind of related with the nervous system, and just first and foremost creating space to feel safe, to even begin to listen, right? To know, okay, it's safe for me to just be in the middle zone. It's safe for me to be at the fork in the road without having to make a reactive decision right now, right? And that's obviously if that is the case. Sometimes we have to make decisions right now, or we have to move. We don't have lots of time, but even just what are those little things we can do to create safety in our body and our nervous system, right? Again, breath work, vagal toning, EFT tapping, like yoga, movement, shaking the body, tapping the body. These are things I love to do just to get rid of that, or to process through that kind of anxious energy that often clouds our vision, right? And then, yeah, some of the other pathways that I explored was, self-knowledge, really kind of coming back to, who are you? What are your priorities right now? What are your values? What matters most to you in this season of your life? And kind of recognizing as well the season that you're in. Coming back to the theme of rewilding, right? Like we work in rhythms. We're not linear beings. We're not constant go, go, go. And our cycles, sometimes we're in a season of rest. Sometimes we're in a season of activation or building or pushing things out. So knowing what season you're in and what supports that season. And you can literally look at the seasons of spring, summer, fall, winter, and kind of what those each represent based on where you're at in your life and your energy. And that, some of these self-inquiries can help us to gain more clarity. I love the values inquiry too, right? Like, what is your personal compass? What is your guiding manifesto? What are your guiding stars, right, for this season, again, this moment in your life, and kind of running things through that. And then a couple of the other ones I spoke about was doing work with the subconscious, doing some shadow work, kind of looking through some of these questions, and it's possible as well to do kind of some self-hypnosis and guided meditations to gain clarity, guided imagery, working with with spirit guides and with metaphor and with archetypes to kind of ask for guidance as well. I didn't actually speak as much to that in that episode, but that's another beautiful pathway. It's kind of like stepping out of the rational, I need to decide this, and this. And it's like, okay, how can I go into a little bit of a journey space or a trance space or a meditation or even working with a drum or a drum track to journey and ask for your power animal to show you something, or ask for, a spirit guide to come and offer you a symbol that represents something that you need in this journey for clarity or whatever it might be. So I'm a big fan of working with symbolism and things like that. But the subconscious mind, we're often carrying beliefs and programs within us that prevent us from seeing clearly and from feeling clearly which direction our intuition is taking us in. And so I think that doing some work on subconscious excavation is also an important part of getting a pathway to clarity. But it doesn't have to be all of those things. It's many different tools. Just first and foremost is learning to listen and create space. Yeah.
Okay. Thank
That's
you.
such a good
Thank you so much.
I feel like I just shared way too much on that. Like, whoa, too many things.
No, it's so good. I was just curious because that's been such a big word and prayer and wish in my life is clarity. So when I saw the title, I was like, oh, I just want to see what she has to say about that, because I'm sure I'm not the only one in the world that's asking for clarity.
Right. Oh my gosh. I'm totally self-conscious right now because I feel like that was the least clear answer to the question about clarity. Yeah. Well, and again, I think it's like we are all individuals, right? And clarity, just like the messages from spirit, just like the ways that we receive intuition and guidance, it's going to be different for everyone, right? And so I think a big part of it's like understanding what a yes feels like in your system. And maybe one simple tool that we can all use when we're looking for clarity, it's like, rather than trying to figure out everything and map out the plans, this, and this, and what are the repercussions going to be, and what do I do with that? It's like actually just sitting or standing with our hands on our body and asking our body what feels like a yes, right? So this is kind of related to kinesiology, but the swaying, right? Doing a sway test. You can say your name, like, yes, that's my name. I'm here. I'm in Guatemala. I'm in wherever you are. And then feel into that decision. Feel into not the whole path, but just one little thing, right? Like, what is it I feel about this? How do I feel? We can even do it for, do I want a coffee or a cacao today? You start to feel often this heart will move forward, or the belly will move forward, and there will be this kind of natural leaning in to something that's a yes for our system, and a kind of a leaning away, like a little bit of a backing out of something that's maybe not right now for us. And so this can be just one little intuitive way that I like to gain a little bit more insight into what my body actually wants, right? Yeah. One little tool
Awesome.
I like to use. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for this episode. I found myself just sort of geeking out with you and on the edge of my seat. And sometimes I forgot that I was sort of supposed to be hosting a podcast. And I was just really listen. And so I just want to say thank you so much. And I'm so happy that we all got connected in the Huachuma Wisdom course and beyond. I can't wait to see, maybe we'll all end up in Chavín someday together.
I hope so. Definitely. It's just been, so amazing to connect here. I was so thrilled to see that a Huachuma Foundation existed when I found you all last year. And I was just so stoked to see the course and this opportunity to connect. So it's all felt really divine and aligned. And just what a beautiful thing to be such supporters of the cactus and of making this work, sustainable and and done in the best possible way, in the right relation, in with regards to all of the right relations, right? Because as we know, medicine work, it's really reaching the masses, and it's important that it's kept in a way that is going to be beneficial to the cactus as well, that gives us so much. Yeah. So it's been such a wonderful conversation. I just so appreciate you
Yeah.
both having me on the podcast. Such an honor. Yeah, so fun. So
Thank you,
yeah,
Kristen.
just
Tell everybody
inspiring.
how they can get in touch with you. They're looking to
Yeah,
connect.
sure. So my website is rewildsoul.com. I'm on, I feel like I'm on and off Instagram, but I'm currently on, and it's just Kristen Yates with an underscore. And I do have a podcast called The Wild Within, and my Substack, which is another project for this year, is doing more writings and sharings and offering more kind of practical tools through articles and essays there. It's also the Wild Within on Substack. So love to connect anywhere there. And if anyone's interested in more information on the ceremonial breathwork facilitator training, that is the templeofbreath.com. So we'd love to connect with you in any of those places.
Wonderful. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Kristen.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me, both of you. And this has been awesome.
Yeah, for us too. So thank you both, and thank you everybody out there for listening and watching. We so appreciate your presence as always, and sending a big thank you to Huachuma. I feel like I don't thank the spirit enough, so thank you so much. Okay, till next time. Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
Huachuma.
This podcast episode was a production of the Huachuma Foundation. If you would like to be a guest on our show, email us at huachumafoundation@gmail.com. If you would like to learn more about us or support our mission, please visit huachumafoundation.org. And most of all, remember to plant more, worry less.